As we continue exploring licensing activities and the responsibilities of supervision, it is important to understand how the rules apply not only to licensed real estate professionals, but also to unlicensed assistants who support brokerage operations. This section connects directly to the previous lesson on the designated broker's duty to provide reasonable supervision and control under Commissioner's Rule R4-2 8-1103, since the broker is ultimately responsible for ensuring that unlicensed staff do not engage in activities that require a real estate license. Understanding what unlicensed assistants may and may not do is critical for maintaining compliance with ARS Section 322122, which prohibits any person from engaging in real estate activity for compensation without holding a valid license issued by the Arizona Department of Real Estate ADRE. Unlicensed assistants play an important role in the daily operations of a brokerage, helping agents and brokers manage administrative tasks, client communications, and transaction coordination. Their contributions are valuable and legitimate as long as they operate within the boundaries established by state law. According to ARS Section 32-2101, paragraph 48, and R4-28-1103A, the test for whether an activity requires a real estate license is whether the person performs the act for another and for compensation. Any act involving the representation of another in the purchase, sale, lease, or negotiation of real property in exchange for payment or the expectation of payment requires a license. Therefore, the distinction between licensed and unlicensed activity depends on whether the activity involves representation, negotiation, or compensation. Permissible activities for unlicensed assistants include administrative and clerical work that supports licensed professionals without crossing into negotiation or representation. Examples include answering phones, scheduling appointments, assembling documents, maintaining files, obtaining signatures on prepared documents without explaining terms, greeting clients, verifying factual information from public sources, placing lockboxes under direct supervision, and delivering completed paperwork to title or escrow companies. They may also prepare marketing materials at the direction of a broker, as long as all content is approved by the broker and complies with R4-2 8-502A, which governs advertising. For instance, an assistant can create flyers for a listing as long as the broker's name is clearly identified and no statements mislead the public about pricing, features, or representation. Another permissible function is managing general office operations. Unlicensed assistants may order supplies, coordinate office meetings, handle mail, and communicate with inspectors, lenders, or title representatives to schedule services or obtain updates. However, they must not interpret or negotiate contract terms or act as an intermediary in communications between buyers, sellers, and agents. The broker must train all assistants on these boundaries to prevent unintentional violations of ARS Section 32-2122A. Conversely, activities that require a real estate license include soliciting clients, negotiating or explaining contract terms, showing properties, hosting open houses without a licensee present, collecting rent or deposits on behalf of others, or discussing price, terms, or conditions of a transaction. These are considered acts of representation that can only be performed by licensed individuals. For example, an unlicensed assistant may schedule a showing, but they cannot escort clients through a property or discuss the home's features, pricing, or contract terms. Similarly, an assistant cannot host an open house or communicate offers to or from clients, as these activities directly involve negotiation and representation. Consider a practical scenario. A licensed broker employs an unlicensed assistant named Karen. Karen answers the phones, sets appointments, and prepares documents for the broker's review. These activities are fully permissible. However, if Karen begins showing homes to clients, explaining listing terms, or collecting earnest money checks without the broker's oversight, she would be engaging in unlicensed real estate activity, violating ARS Section 32-2122, and exposing both herself and her broker to disciplinary action under ARS Section 32-2153 AA21 for failure to supervise. Commissioner's Rule R4-28-1103A makes it clear that the employing broker must supervise all licensees and unlicensed personnel to prevent violations of the law. The broker must establish written policies defining permissible activities for unlicensed assistants, provide ongoing training, and maintain oversight of all transactions. The ADRI holds the broker accountable for the conduct of all staff, whether licensed or unlicensed. In disciplinary proceedings, ignorance of an assistant's unauthorized conduct is not a valid defense for the broker. There are also limited exceptions under ARS Section 32-2121A, where individuals may perform real estate-related activities without a license. These include owners or lessors managing their own property, attorneys acting within the scope of their legal duties, and individuals performing clerical tasks under the supervision of a broker. However, these exceptions are narrowly interpreted, and anyone who goes beyond the allowed activities risks being cited for unlicensed practice. In recent years, technological and remote work trends have blurred the lines between clerical and licensed activity, particularly in virtual settings. For example, an unlicensed assistant managing online listings or responding to social media inquiries must avoid discussing transaction details or giving opinions about property value. Any such conduct may be deemed representation, triggering the licensing requirement. Thus, brokers must update their supervision practices to include oversight of digital communication, ensuring compliance even in modern, virtual environments. Review summary. In this section, we learned that unlicensed assistants may perform administrative, clerical, and supportive functions under the supervision of a licensed broker, but may not engage in acts of representation, negotiation, or compensation-based services. Under ARS Section 32-2122, any activity performed for another and for compensation requires a license. Permissible tasks include scheduling, document assembly, data entry, and communication limited to factual information. Activities requiring a license include negotiating contracts, showing property, collecting funds, or explaining legal terms. The designated broker bears responsibility under R4-28-1103 to establish written policies, provide training, and supervise all unlicensed personnel to prevent violations. Discussion. Why is it important for brokers to distinguish between licensed and unlicensed activities? Answer. To prevent violations of ARS Section 322122 and ensure that unlicensed personnel do not engage in real estate activity that requires licensure. Can an unlicensed assistant show a property to a potential buyer? Answer. No, because showing a property and discussing its features are acts of representation that require a real estate license. What types of activities can an unlicensed assistant legally perform? Answer. Administrative and clerical duties, such as scheduling, answering phones, preparing marketing materials, or obtaining signatures on prepared documents under broker supervision. Who is responsible if an unlicensed assistant engages in real estate activity? Answer. The designated broker, who is legally responsible under R4-28-1103 for the supervision and conduct of all staff. What happens if an unlicensed assistant performs tasks that require a license? Answer. Both the assistant and the employing broker may face disciplinary action under ARS Section 32-2153 A21, and the assistant may be charged with unlicensed activity under ARS Section 32-2122. Closing remarks: unlicensed assistants are valuable members of a real estate team, providing essential administrative support that allows brokers and agents to focus on client representation and transactions. However, maintaining compliance requires a clear understanding of legal boundaries. The designated broker must implement firm policies and direct oversight to ensure that unlicensed assistants do not inadvertently cross into licensed activity. By understanding and respecting these distinctions, both brokers and assistants uphold the integrity of the profession and protect the public from unauthorized or unqualified representation in Arizona's real estate market.